Welcome everyone to Couch Potato Diary. Tuesday. Happy Tuesday. My name is Peter Klein. Thank you very much for tuning in today. Coming off of a Game 7 in the NHL, and now we get ready for the NBA's conference finals, plus a trade. So a lot to get to. Let's get right into it and talk some hockey. So the Edmonton Oilers are off to the NHL's Final Four after a 3-2 win over the Vancouver Canucks in Game 7. And this was a dominant performance for the Edmonton Oilers. And I know at times they have had some convincing performances in these playoffs, and I have more given the brunt of things to what the other team didn't do compared to what Edmonton did do. But I think you have to give full credit to the Edmonton Oilers for the dominant performance. They controlled about 55 minutes of this game by once again playing keep away with the puck from the Canucks. They didn't, until Vancouver got rolling there with a few minutes left to try to make that comeback, they didn't give Vancouver anything. They took the crowd out of it early, and they just controlled this game. And the big spot, I thought, was with 2 minutes to go, you see this Edmonton Oilers team just completely shut things down for Vancouver. And there was a little bit the Canucks didn't do. Like, I thought Miller just looked bagged and just couldn't get anything going with a couple minutes to go. Couldn't get the puck in deep, couldn't help out along the wall. He just couldn't do anything. But a lot of it was how good Edmonton was in their puck retrieval, in limiting the zone entries for the Vancouver Canucks, and in just absolutely putting a lid on whatever Vancouver wanted to do for those last 2 minutes. Once it got to 6-on-5, Edmonton put that shit on lockdown. And it was really, really impressive. And look, everyone stepped up for Edmonton in this game. You saw Connor McDavid was in complete control. I don't know if he came up with a point in this game, but he was playing everything like a marionette in this one and just completely ran things for his team. The depth guys stepping up. CeCe gets a goal. Nugent Hopkins gets a huge goal on the power play, and I do consider him a depth guy at this point. But even like McLeod was coming up with some big plays when they needed him to. This was a complete effort from the Edmonton Oilers. And then Stuart Skinner played well enough. He wasn't tested a lot, but when he was everything that Edmonton needed him to be. And that was, I thought, really impressive from the Edmonton Oilers in this game. And it's good because now they need the series of their life. And we'll get to Vancouver here in a second. But they were great in these last couple of games. They now need to be perfect because the Dallas Stars, you want to talk about like everyone contributing. The Dallas Stars, everybody's pulling on the rope in the same direction. It's one thing to play keep away from Cole and Hronek and Myers. There is no Cole, Hronek, and Myers on that Dallas Stars team. It's another when you have to face Heiskanen and Tanev and that deep D-core for Dallas. It is so difficult. And look, like they have so much talent on the offensive side. So if you're able to shut down this fantastic offensive team, and if you're able to penetrate this incredible defense, you still have to deal with one of the best goalies in the world in Jake Ottinger. It feels so daunting from an Edmonton standpoint to try to break through against these guys. And Edmonton fans are probably saying the same thing. Look, they have to deal with McDavid and Draisaitl and Hyman and Ryan Nugent-Hopkins, and then the D-core. Okay, but they have to deal with McDavid and Draisaitl, and then you have to get through Stuart Skinner. Okay, but McDavid and I know I'm oversimplifying things. I'm taking shots, and it's unnecessary. But this is a different animal than the LA Kings. This is a different animal than the Vancouver Canucks. And I know I said going into the last series that Vancouver was a deeper team than Dallas. If Vancouver won this game, I'd be having this exact same segment instead of, well, it's one thing to beat CeCe and Nurse and Desharnais, but what about Heiskanen and all these guys? Like, I basically had the same segment planned regardless of who came through. Dallas is just that good. They have gone through the Knights and the Avalanche to get to this point. They are an incredible hockey team. So my prediction is Dallas in 5. I think the Stars wrap this one up and make their way to the Stanley Cup final. On the losing end of Game 7, another bad start kills the Vancouver Canucks. And this is where I think their lack of playoff experience came back to bite them. This moment, the last two games, quite frankly, the moment has seemed too much for them. And I think that they were overwhelmed where Edmonton was calm, composed, and just played their game. That's like when we get into the clutch discussion, and we don't need to have that today. I could, on a rainy day, I'll put that episode out and just piss some people off. But I don't necessarily view clutch as this mystical land of talent that players get to. The one argument I will listen to is clutch is staying your best in the biggest moments. Edmonton did that, Vancouver didn't. And I think that was just not been in those situations before. This Edmonton team, it's not just a young bunch of kids anymore. They've been in a lot of these situations before. This is another trip to the conference finals for them. They know what these situations take. Vancouver, aside from JT Miller, they haven't been in spots like this before. And I think that really showed up. And for the second game in a row as well, special teams killed them. In game 6, it was the 5-on-3 that they got jack shit on. In game 7, that 4-minute power play that got turned into like a minute of pressure, and that was it, was, I thought, like a real good way for them to be able to get back into this game and at least build some momentum when they had none, and they ended up getting outshot on the power play 1-0 on a breakaway by Connor Brown. So that was another killer. They needed some players to step up, and this is where Elias Pettersson is going to have a lot to answer for, because like it's one thing when everyone's producing and okay, well, he's kind of the quiet guy. With Besser out, he needed to step up. And it's the same thing that I said about Toronto when Matthews was out, when Nylander was out. The reason you have so many of these guys is so that when one of them's out, another guy can step up. When you have Besser, Miller, and Pettersson, and one of them is out, you need both guys to really be clicking. And I feel like Miller kind of just ran out of gas, like I said before. And Pettersson was fine, but he was not in control of this game the way that he needed to. But you could really feel like this depth that we've been talking about all season long, that it just got tested a little bit. And there was that moment. Pettersson's moving in. It's 3-1. Pettersson comes in, feeds it across, and the chance ends up missing. And it's DiGiuseppe, who is fine as a third, fourth line guy. But you really wish there was a little bit more in that situation there that they could have got. And I feel like it just kind of hurt them a little bit. And I think their lack of defense hurted them. Their lack of defense hurt them in this game as well. And that's something they needed to address at the deadline. And that is the big lesson that I'm taking from these Stanley Cup playoffs so far, is I think you need to now overdo it at the trade deadline when it comes to whether it's addressing your needs or addressing depth. I think you need to, once you think you have too much, get a little bit more. If you can. Obviously, there are situations where that's difficult. But, you look at this Vancouver team, they went out, they made the move for Zadorov. They made the move for Lindholm. Probably could have used another defenseman. And there was the talk of Tanev, and they didn't really get there. But it felt like they needed to go out and get one more guy. And I thought that way about Toronto on their blue line. I thought that way about New Jersey between the pipes, and they end up missing the playoffs entirely. Carolina probably needed to address the goaltending situation. And we are seeing now there are so many. It's not just that we have a couple dominant teams, right? Like a Tampa Bay or Colorado or Vegas in years past. It's that there's so many that are so good. Like, you look at the playoffs when we started, and I said, there's 12, 13 teams that feel like they have a legitimate chance of winning the Stanley Cup, and most of them will be disappointed. That's how good it is. So I don't think you can just go, well, we addressed a couple things and we'll piece together the defense as we go. I think you need to now overdo it at the trade deadline and build as close to a super team as you can, because it's just so talented in this league now, and I think it's going to be that way for a little bit. So that my main takeaway from the trade deadline is teams need to trade more. My main takeaway from the playoffs is teams need to trade more and need to go out and try to address a lot of these needs. But it does leave a couple of interesting decisions now for the offseason. For Vancouver, Shelov's is interesting. He comes out of this as a star, and if I'm Vancouver, I'm looking at moving that cat. There are goaltending needy teams, and there's only a couple goalies out on the market. We'll talk about one in a second, and the other one, Jacob Markstrom, out here in Calgary. But I think there are more people looking for seats in this game that are going to be, I think, knocking on Vancouver's door for Shelovs. And I think for Vancouver, it makes a ton of sense. Thatcher Demko is your guy. And Casey DeSmith, I think, is an all right backup. But I think you have something in Shelovs right now, so go out, make that move. Maybe you can address a need on your blue line, or just get some draft capital back after giving up quite a bit of it for Lindholm and for Zadorov, and try to recoup some things that way. But I think the big decision out in Vancouver is Elias Lindholm. He stepped up. Talking about players out in Vancouver that needed to step up, he was one who did. I will absolutely grant him that. I thought he was quite good. I don't know if he's as good as he's going to want to be paid, though. And, like, I think 9 is kind of out the window. But someone was saying, oh, Carolina should take a run at Lindholm. He was just making 4.5. Get him at that. Look, if Lindholm's making 4.5, he's a Vancouver Canuck, I think. If Lindholm was going to be making 4.5, he'd still be a Calgary Flame, for God's sake. But I think Lindholm is going to be wanting probably around 6 to 8 million. And that's no reporting here. And if you guys have been watching me long enough, you know that I'm not reporting anything. But that kind of feels like where he's going to be wanting, and that's just too much for what Vancouver needs. And I think the perfect player to fill that role for Vancouver is Chandler Stevenson. With the moves that Vegas has made, it's kind of knocked Chandler Stevenson out of favor out there. And I think Stevenson is the type of player that you win with. I think he plays with the pace that you need at the National Hockey League in 2024. And he has that experience that Vancouver is desperately lacking. I think that is just fits like a glove type of a move for the Canucks. We did see the offseason get going here as the Tampa Bay Lightning have acquired Ryan McDonagh and a 4th round pick for a 2nd and a 7th. That feels like more than I'd want to be giving up, quite frankly, for McDonagh at this point, but it is an upgrade for this team. And the reporting today is that they have been looking for top 4 defensemen and felt that the free agent market might be a little bit too pricey, so they go with a guy who only has a couple more years left, but it's at 6.75, and this is a Lightning team that only had around $12 million in cap space. They still have a couple of holes they need to fill on the blue line, and by the way, their captain's a free agent, so I don't know where they go from here. I don't want to say, well, they got Ryan McDonagh, so that probably means Stamkos is out, but it feels like, A, they're making another run at it, that's very clear, B, I don't know where the money is coming from to sign Steven Stamkos now. So, obviously, several more moves are coming from the Tampa Bay Lightning, but this just feels like a weird one to shoot your shot at for me. For a team that has already lost so much, or spent so much draft capital over the years to build up a championship team, to then be giving up more big assets for a player who is 35, coming off of a good season, following a bad one a year ago, and is making $6.75 million a year. Like, it feels like the cons are a bit more than the pros. On the Preds side, this opens up substantial cap space. They do have Johansson in a retention at $4 million. They do have a buyout penalty on Matt Duchene for around $5.5 million. So this makes up for at least some of that, but everyone is drawing the line now that this frees up some cap space if they want to go out and acquire Mitch Marner from the Toronto Maple Leafs in exchange for UC Saros plus. It's a really interesting move. That would be an absolute blockbuster. It would, I think, solidify 2 contenders, and I think would obviously be just a earth-shattering move around the National Hockey League. So if that is really the setup, then things are getting really interesting. And it would be funny that you would have that move, like the Lightning would make the move to bring in McDonagh, that would set up the Nashville Predators to go out and acquire Mitch Marner, which, depending on how much money goes back Nashville's way, could set up the Leafs to free up cap space to sign Steven Stamkos. So, God, if they did that, I would laugh hysterically. Stamkos should not be a Leaf, but it would just be funny if that was just the circle of life that played out here in the NHL. That's the story from the world of hockey, but basketball gets back going tonight with its Final Four, pro style. Let's preview Celtics Pacers. So the NBA Finals are fast approaching. And we have the Celtics taking on the Pacers in one half of the bracket now to decide who is going to be the East representative. And we all know this is going to be an uphill climb for the Indiana Pacers. I don't know if they have the guys who can slow down Tatum or Brown or White or anyone. This is going to have to be 145-140 for the Pacers to win any games in this series. And the problem is, this is, I gave them credit before. This is a high-end offensive team. But the Celtics have more high-end offensive players with Tatum and Brown. Like, if this gets into a scoring contest, Tatum and Brown can each score 50. So, and White can pick up the slack as well. So, and like, even Horford can get in on it. You know, like, they have so many pieces that can really give the Pacers some problems that I don't know how that happens. And then another problem for the Pacers is that Boston, on the other end, has the defensive guys who can step up and try to lock down. You can put, like, Halliburton was a problem in that last series for the Knicks. For Boston, you can throw White, Holiday, Tatum, Brown, whatever, at Halliburton and trying to slow him down. And that's why I think the real X factor in this series for the Pacers are their bigs. They are going to need Siakam and Turner to step up and be matchup problems. Because I do think Halliburton kind of gets clamped down on a little bit. And especially with no Porzingis, not that he's not Dikembe Mutombo. But with no Porzingis, that there is going to be a lack of size out there that is going to allow, I think, Siakam and Turner to be able to kind of have it their way. And I think the matchup of what Boston does on Siakam is going to be interesting and how that affects things on the Halliburton side of things. But I think Turner specifically is the real one because I think he becomes an X factor on both ends of the floor. Offensively, you saw it in Game 7 against the Knicks. Once he gets going, it just adds another dimension to this offense that makes it so much more difficult to deal with. But defensively, I still think of this guy as someone who can be a shot alterer at the rim. And if he can be a real presence down low and making the Celtics think twice about getting into the paint and trying to get things there, he's not Victor Wembanyama, but he can be someone who can alter things at the rim. And if he can do that and turn this basically into a three-point shooting contest, then it starts to work in the Pacers' favor a little bit. So I think he is going to be a really big key in this series. So I just gave a couple reasons why Indiana could be feeling a little bit positive about things. I have Celtics in 4. I think, you know what? I'll go Celtics in 5 because Boston takes their foot off the gas always. So we'll go Celtics in 5 as the official prediction there. A bit of a quicker one today. Just a few things going on here. So not going to get to the CFL preview. That continues to get kicked along and not going to get to our wrestling talk. I'll do a bit more of a bigger wrestling combat sports show on the thing tomorrow. But that's going to do it. Make sure if you are listening, subscribe and leave a review. If you are watching, make sure you subscribe, like the video, and leave a comment. And follow me on social media. I'm at Primetime Klein. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and I'll talk to all y'all later. I'm out.